Welcome to B-Flow Sessions, the podcast where we help you find and stay in the flow on the water and in life. I'm your host, Brad Burton. Join me as I sit down with paddlers, athletes, and adventurers who are all seeking the flow. B-Flow Sessions is brought to you by our friends at Pucon Kayak Retreat. Are you dreaming of a Chilean whitewater escape this winter? Picture turquoise rapids, warm sunny days, and world-class rivers for every skill level, all based out of a riverside retreat built by paddlers for paddlers. If that sounds like your kind of winter, then Pucon Kayak Retreat is the place. To learn more or to book your dream kayak trip, reach out to me directly at bflowkayak@gmail.com and I'll help you get connected. B-Flow Sessions is powered by Dagger Kayaks. Wherever there's water, Dagger Kayaks will help you find your flow. Team-tested, paddler-proven designs for all paddlers and all water. And thanks to our partners at Sawyer Paddles, Stolquist PFDs, and Level 6 Gear for keeping us in the flow. Welcome to the next episode of B-Flow Sessions. As always, I'm your host, Brad Burton, and in this session, I am joined by one of the legends, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, probably maybe the first ever pro kayaker, the guy who kind of started off and said, you know what? I'm just going to hit the road in my van. I'm going to go all the kayak competitions. I'm going to video myself and all my buddies along the way. And people are going to give me money to do it. And people are going to buy videos of me kayaking. And they did, and he did. Ladies and gentlemen, Dan Gavere.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to sit down and have a little talk story session with you. So yeah, let's do it, Brad.
Yeah, I mean, when I got started in the sport in the mid to late '90s, guys like you and Clay and EJ and BJ Johnson, you were the people that we idolized, and we would raft guide or teach kayaking, and then go back to staff housing and throw in videos like Kavu Day and other videos that you were making out there, and it was just like that's the life, man. That's what we all aspired to be, and you were one of the first people to kind of start that could be a thing for professional kayakers to do. And so many of us that lived that dream, and so many people still are, kind of have you to thank as one of the forefathers of that. So take us through, how did you find your flow in kayaking, and how did you first decide, like, man, I can make this where I could just travel and kayak?
Yeah, well, I think, a big part of my inspiration after um, my dad kind of forced me to go camping with him, and
Hmm.
uh, and enjoying nature meant getting out of the city and doing that by way of a whitewater canoe. And as soon as I saw some kayakers surfing a little wave on the San Juan, I was like, "Oh, get me out of this canoe and into one of those kayaks, be on my own surfing little waves." And he complied. Yeah, he definitely supported that kind of desire. And a few years went by. We paddled some rivers. I was super young. I couldn't really roll. My hips were way too small. I'm a dancer, and I took a pretty bad swim on Shoshone. I think it was in the spring of '84 when it was super high, and so did my dad. So I kind of stepped out for a minute. But then when I got my driver's license, I got back into it again, and I had a couple of good friends in high school, and we would go up to the Snake all the time. My friend Justin and I would go up there, and we would just kayak. We loved it.
Hmm.
We just instead of going out and getting into trouble with our high school friends, we were like driving up to Wyoming every weekend and just camping and kayaking, and it was the best. We were so stoked.
And
And
where
we
was
were
that at? Where were
snowboarding.
you growing up at?
I grew up in Salt Lake City, and this is
Okay,
like one of my
that's right.
snowboard buddies. He was like a sponsored snowboarder, and so we were really into like, snowboarding and riding POW and and everything that snowboarding had. So snowboarding had a huge influence on all of my kayaking pursuits and everything and the way I
Yeah.
thought about it because I was like so into, board sports and just that whole genre of like even like crusty demons of dirt and just like kind of having fun action sports, it was like
Sure.
this whole new action sports thing. And all that was video oriented and video driven. And so I took a real close look at like what it would take to be to just kayak every day and make it into my job, my lifestyle, just my dream. And I kind of looked at what some of the snowboarders were doing, and it was like Craig Kelly and these pro snowboarders, and they just did pictures and videos. And so I'm like, oh, I got to do more pictures and videos. Oh, it's already enjoyed doing that stuff a little bit. And my dad definitely, well, both my parents supported, my artistic side. So like, you know, getting me camera gear and stuff, was went right into that. Um, so I got really into, carrying a camera, figuring out how to like record some moments so we could share that with our friends. And then also to try to make ourselves look good so we could show it to other people and maybe get some support because it
Right.
was about, getting those sponsors and I asked a couple of my snowboard buddies like, hey, how are you landing the big sponsorship, where people are actually not just giving you free snowboards and gloves and goggles, but actually writing checks,
Right.
and the core of that was video. It was really
Mm,
video, moving images with it's either that kind of like action sports porn mixed with documentary kind of action. We didn't have Instagram, cell phones, any of that stuff back then. So it was
sure.
just straight, it was either, video, little high eight videotapes, or we were shooting on film. I shot a lot of 16 millimeter and high eight film as well because that was kind of the medium of like the true, cinematographer back then, you know.
Yeah, and and that was the heyday of the kayaking video. Maybe it all coincided with the heyday of the freestyle tour and the heyday of boat designs. I mean, I think like from like 95, but 95 to 2005, like that 10-year
Yeah.
period to me was kind of like the renaissance, like the peak of whitewater kayaking, right? And I remember like early on, your videos. Had like an appeal to them that they was more like a lifestyle and
Mhm.
like not a documentary, but not just like straight use the word porn, like not just loud music with people hucking themselves off
Right.
waterfalls, but like a combination of the two, and then some big budget production companies then come in like TGR and things and take it to the next level. But I remember yours as being the first ones. You mentioned the artistic side of it that really showed that and showed the characters as well.
Yeah, well, I was just so lucky to be in it when in that time period, and I just feel so grateful and really got to thank everyone who supported me back then because it was truly a solo adventure. I didn't, at that point, I was just getting after it. I didn't have parents that were really like supporting it or traveled with me or anything. And it was about just learning how to do it. And I really just like, built little decks. Like literally, I'd get photos printed and then I would, type up a proposal and put it all in a little folder and literally go into these companies and go like, okay, we want to do a 60-minute video and these are all the people that are going to be in it and this is why it's going to be great. And then you can play it at all your dealer stores and their little, they all had a TV with a VHS, and
Yep.
it'll have a really awesome cover. So it'll be like the video that everyone grabs for. And like in snowboarding, I was already doing some of these snowboard films, like not high end like TGR style films, but like kind of
Sure.
mid-level, like a pretty good production value. But we were just like alphabet soup back then as far as like snowboard films. I mean, it is already blown up, like there were $1 million snowboard companies doing it. But like here I was looking at kayaking and there really wasn't that same kind of production value showing what
Right.
we did, and just that whole kind of amalgamation of how the freestyle kayakers lived. It was about the lifestyle, but also about river running. It was a lot
Right.
about river running during the week and then play boating on the weekends, going to the
Yep.
competition, make a little more money because that was another side hustle. Because then
Yep.
there was like money at the competitions or getting your sponsors to say, hey, we'll pay you to show up, we'll pay you to do well. I used to be able to not con, but like convince
Convince. Yeah.
Jan Zwanzig, the former owner and creator of Wave Sport Kayaks. I was like, here's the deal. we have a keg and we just wrap a Wave Sport banner around it, and like you get a free beer as long as you have a Wave Sport catalog in your hand. I told Chan that. And he
Love
went
it.
for it at a few of those events, where there wasn't going to be like a proper party. And
Right.
we knew that like every event needed a proper party. So if they didn't have one scheduled already, we would come in and have like the ultimate like parking lot party. And that's where like you had that interjection also of like that lifestyle that it was almost like a miniature Grateful Dead show in a way. Like everyone's
Yeah.
just like hanging out, all their gear's drying everywhere. It's a band of gypsies that have like
Yep.
really perfected the art of like glamping and like car camping back then. And we all had just
Mm-hmm.
like crazy rigs, like I was always looking for the next ultimate um kayak adventure rig. So yeah, I went through some pretty fun rigs back then, and I just, was really lucky with how the timing of freestyle, the explosion of kayaking into the mainstream, not really, but like a little bit, like as much as it ever has.
Much as we could have, yeah.
Yeah, and then just like the space where we were like, trying to promote ourselves with both the events and the videos. Like I was
Yeah.
just really lucky because all that stuff was happening back then, and we
Right.
were kind of writing our own ticket after a little while once the early 2000s hit, and like people like, Teva and some of these other big companies were like, supporting some of us like really well, with like
Right.
Chevy trucks or whatever.
Yeah.
It was pretty amazing, but it but I feel pretty, honored and proud of myself for like helping put that out there early time on video because it was really the
Yeah.
best way to share was was Paddle Quest was like our big
Yep.
one. But,
It's one
um,
of my
but Paddle
favorites.
Frenzy, yeah, Paddle Frenzy was the very first one. And at the 93 Worlds, that's or it was
Yeah.
92 at the team trials when I had talk to my producer with some of the snowboard videos that we make. Hey, let's do a kayak movie. And he was like, okay, let's do one. Let's do like 16 mil kayak movie. And, we'll just like go and paddle some awesome stuff. And we'll just kind of document exactly what I was just telling you, kind of like that whole lifestyle. And at the team trials in Oregon
Yeah.
in
Bob's Hole.
92, yep, Bob's Hole, I met Corin Addison. And I
Okay.
was like, this is like the perfect guy. This is like the perfect sidekick for me to go paddling and do this video with, because I was
Right.
kind of looking for someone that would be like awesome to do this with. And and yeah, Corin was there and we like hit it off. Ironically, he didn't make a whole lot of friends back then, but we like hit it off and I'm like, hey, like just jump in my car and we're gonna go make this kayak film for like a month and go run a bunch of awesome whitewater and surf some big waves um and he was like, yeah, I'm all in. So we went around and filmed like Coyote Falls on South Fork of the Clearwater and like some classic stuff that people all the time are even remind me. They're like, oh yeah, that one section with Corn and you, talking by the campfire, and Corn had like a 12-inch tall mohawk, and yeah, we had a kick out of that, and then that really got the momentum going. And a couple years later, in '95, we hooked Timex on
Mm.
a major kind of like a major big production to do it like big time. I was like talking with Robbie, the owner of Polar Bear, and I was like, we need to do something that like will be like will timestamp our sport like at this time in history because of so much stuff is going on and like we need to go to Chile and film and we need to go to Europe and film and and hit all the classics in the US. I was living in Montana, so I was all about those West Coast rivers like California, Oregon, Montana. And then we would go on rodeo tours, so we would be in Colorado, we'd be in West Virginia, all over the Southeast and the East Coast and stuff like that. So um, we put together Paddle Quest, and that really, I thought we knocked it out of the park with that and spent about 18 months filming uh, and then like 2 weeks trying to edit it before the for the trade show. The outdoor retailer used to
Hmm.
be in Reno, and so
Okay.
this was the last year that the outdoor retailer was in Reno. We premiered Paddle Quest to yeah, like a big uh, viewing hall and stuff like that on a big screen TV, and like the top brass from Timex was there, so it was really a glorious moment. Yeah, I'll never forget that night. Yeah, it was really cool because everyone was on their feet. And yeah, I thought it was really well produced. We shot it all in film, so we had to transfer it all to beta tapes and then sync the audio and the stuff back then was all pretty analog, but we were trying to edit it on this nonlinear Avid editing system. And of course, like 5 days before we were to leave for Reno, we're like 80% done and the Mac wouldn't turn on and it was like breaking up and we were like didn't know what to do, I'm like rubbing the side of it with ice packs trying to cool the computer down, to get it to turn on. Because like our whole existence was in this computer and it wouldn't turn on, but
And now
we
you
were
have
able
more
to get
power
it
in your
done.
phone, right, than that computer did.
Yeah, yeah. So Paddle Quest was that was kind of the pinnacle of my kayaking days, and it was a lot of fun and going
Yeah,
chilling
because
and getting to make
because
those
Chris
trips.
Bilius was like my first big mentor, and he
Yeah,
was friends with my dad, and took me under his wing and brought me down to the Fudo. Like I watched Paddle Quest on a loop.
yeah, yeah. We got to go hang out at Chris's camp, and that like was perfect. He had just kind of developed his camp down there in the Rio Fu and gave us just the red carpet treatment and showed us, all the big rapids. He's like, okay, here we go. Here's throne room. Like, who's stepping up? Like, it was super fun. We got to go down there with Tommy Moe. He had just won the Olympic gold medal in downhill skiing and stuff like that.
Right.
So that was fun. He wasn't, the caliber kayaker we were, so he was coming through the rapids with his eyes pretty wide open and we were like turning around everywhere we could and surfing things and he'd get a little pissed because we would always like catch waves on the fly. And when you do that, all of a sudden the person that was following you now becomes like the leader, and they're like going down the river like, bro, I'm like, I want to follow you guys. I don't want to be like going down the river all by myself while you guys are behind me, like surfing huge waves. But it was a lot of fun, and Corn had that new design, and he was just shredding and catching like every wave and just spinning everywhere and doing air tricks and stuff. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Hey, one thing I'm curious because you have, I mean, you've been at a top level in multiple different outdoor sports, and you grew up snowboarding, skiing, and obviously, we're here to talk about your kayaking career. But you mentioned, of course, like I live this, and people like know it. Like when you're on the freestyle tour, you're like you said, you're playboating the weekends, and then you're running the waterfalls and the creeks Monday through Thursday. Um, do is there that much cross pollination in other outdoor sports? Like for example, if somebody is a half pipe snowboarder, do they also get dropped in backcountry to do extreme snowboarding, or do they focus on one genre more so where kayakers it tends to like we do a lot of different genres
Mhm.
within our sport. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what level you're talking about. I guess back then, that was pretty doable. I mean, I think these days, in order to be at the the top of the sport, if you're going to beat Dane, you're not going to be really snowboarding all winter. You're going to be probably kayaking 350 days a year, So,
No, I guess
um,
what I meant is like amongst the snowboarders, like if you got a guy who's like a half piper, does he
mhm.
also do backcountry, or does it, or because like the playboater will freestyle on the weekends and then run a class 5 creek on a Tuesday.
Oh, I see what you
Um,
mean. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
does that go on in other sports where they might do a variety of different things?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's
Okay.
some you know, different. disciplines within the sport. And I think the best athletes do dabble in other disciplines so that they're more rounded, if
Okay.
that makes
Yeah.
sense.
I don't have,
So,
other than a little bit of mountain biking, I've never done a whole lot of other. Uh, Broke my
yeah,
hand snowboarding one time a couple months before team trials. That wasn't a very good call, but it was a it was a cold spell in Western North Carolina, and I went to Cataloochee and slipped on a patch of ice and broke my thumb.
oh shoot, ouch.
It was cool though. My
So,
surgeon, he crafted a brace that like molded to my paddle, so I was able
oh, good.
to still
That's awesome.
train. It was cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I mean, I
Um,
think, now it's all gets kind of clumped into, that outdoor sports guy or gal or
yeah.
person, and they're probably going to have, next to their kayak rack, they're definitely going to have a mountain bike rack. And then they
Right.
probably have their winter sports rack, which is going to either have snowboards or skis or snowshoes or, skate skis, or something like that, in
Right.
there. Most of my friends, those are like the main sports that kind of cover like 80% of their recreation. And then I have, a bunch of friends that also, ride dirt bikes, snowmobiles. That's like pretty popular too,
Yeah.
um, some
Talk to us
boats.
about some of the other sports you've done real quick. I know we're here mostly to talk about your kayaking escapades, but I mean, you've achieved like pro status in multiple different outdoor disciplines, stand-up paddleboarding, and I always get these confused. But and so correct me if I'm wrong, but like you did a lot of kiteboarding or like windsurfing too, right?
Yeah, I moved to Hood River in the early 2000s because, I was kind of starting to look for other things to do besides paddling all the time. And
Hmm.
my back was hurting a lot. Like I was having really intense like sciatica pains and back then I wasn't very good at addressing that pain myself. Um, but then I started kiteboarding a little bit and it really just kind of started like straightening me out and it really
Oh
actually
yeah.
made my back feel a lot better. And so I ended up once my kayaking career kind of came to an end, I started really like kiteboarding a lot. I was doing 300 days a year kiteboarding and
Wow.
yeah, and I had all that photography knowledge and video knowledge, so I leveraged that in the kiteboard industry and started doing a lot of photography for the magazines, and then getting invited on some different uh, photo and video shoots and stuff like that. And naturally, when you're riding 4 or 5, 6 hours every day, you're gonna get better. And so I
Sure.
got some sponsors and did okay in some not like super pro competitions, but enough to wet my whistle as far as my competitive itch that I've always had. And for me, it's not necessarily about having to win as much as it is just enjoying the social aspect of competing and also just being aware of what the best are doing, and being like, oh,
Yeah.
could I do that? Like sometimes depending on where you're at or what level you're at, you get into a bubble and you don't, it's hard to see what's out there. So, I've always had that competitive itch. I was a semi-professional off-road RC car racer for a few years as well. So, um, yeah, when I get into something like you said about kayaking, I seem to get very focused and channeled into that. So stand-up paddleboarding really uh, stole my heart, in the like 2010, 2011, and I really took a ride through that whole space with stand-up paddling from racing 14-foot composite boards, and hundreds of 10K races in the ocean, in the rivers, in the lakes, all over the world to being the first one to run a whole bunch of different whitewater sections and developing some of my own designs that were, utilizing that drop stitch inflatable technology that we see so many paddle boards are now. That really suited whitewater. So, having some opportunities with some of those early adopters of whitewater SUP and like developing a board that would work well on that. I kind of developed that 9.6 by 30 36-inch kind of dimension for the original river board that Starboard did. And that was really successful. They were selling, sometimes a couple thousand units each year, and whitewater sup was
Yeah.
actually a thing. It is a thing, and we actually added it to the mountain games here, and then all of a
Okay.
sudden, all these like river festivals started adding SUP, and
Right.
and we started fielding, these giant classes of stand-up whitewater paddlers, and sometimes the women's divisions would have the same numbers. So it was like this whole thing too that was became kind of popular with the gals because it took a lot of the things that really suck about whitewater kayaking away, which is being upside down,
Right.
smashing your head on a rock and having to roll. And if you don't roll, you got to swim and just all the things, it kind of takes the whole rolling aspect out of whitewater. So it's just nice. You just crawl back on the board and you're back on. That's it. You paddle on your knees, paddle on your butt, paddle standing, whatever. Doesn't
Right.
matter as long as you're safe. You're getting short. But it's such a nice way and a free way to explore whitewater a little bit. Obviously, we're not running class five, but for that, humdrum kind of class two, class three, that for me would be maybe a little bit less stimulating sitting down in a kayak.
Sure.
Stand-up paddling was really exhilarating, and just, being able to carve a really nice eddy turn into a nice big strong eddy. It
Yeah.
always feels better on a stand-up paddleboard than it does in a kayak to me.
Okay.
Just because you're up tall and you can really feel the torque through your legs. It's like snowboarding, it's really
Right.
cool. So it's literally like snowboarding and and um and kayaking combined, and so as soon as I got on a paddleboard and paddled around on the Columbia Gorge a little bit, I was just instantly thinking in the back of my head, I wonder if I can do this on the river, you know? Yeah. And so that kind of became a thing, and so that's been kind of fun. And now that sport has kind of, gone through its heyday, and I believe
Yeah.
has kind of lived its best life, and now, I'm really into hydrofoiling, stand-up paddle hydrofoiling,
Okay.
doing
Tell us what that is.
downrivers. So basically, you go out when it's really windy. You paddle a smaller board, which is going to be about 7 or 8 feet long. It's pretty narrow. It's only about 20 inches wide to 22 inches wide. So pretty tippy. If you were just to jump on this board with nothing attached to the bottom, you would
Right.
not be able to stand up on it. Like it'd be
Okay.
impossible. But once you add that, 5 pound, foil system to the bottom of the board, it's like
Yeah.
this massive keel. So it makes it stable enough to paddle around,
Sure.
stable enough that you can catch a wave, while standing and paddling. So what you do is you go out in my case, in the Columbia River, and you paddle as hard as you can. And if you have good technique and you time it just right with a wave, that hydrofoil, you'll have enough speed that the board will lift up out of the water. So you're actually, surfing that hydrofoil.
Oh, wow.
And then you just ride the hydrofoil and you're literally standing on the board, which is completely out of the water by like 2 or 3 feet.
Right.
And then you surf the swell, and the swell actually travels upstream against the Columbia. So
Mm.
the wind is blowing at your back, but it's actually blowing you upstream. And so your ground speed is respectable, but your water speed is really fast
Sure.
because the current is going by. And
Right.
and you can just ride these swells, and once you get, good at it, you can be up on foil and riding swell for, 6, 7, 8 miles easy, and doing full 360s all the way around on the same swell, and just traveling, anywhere from 8 miles an hour is about where you're going to start getting up on foil. And then if, the better you are, you can get up to, 20, 25 miles an hour pretty easily on these foil boards. So
Wow.
it's pretty amazing how much speed that you can just generate through gravity and just foiling on the swell. Um, so there's that. There's a couple other genres of hydrofoiling in the gorge that we enjoy. One is called wing foiling, which is where you hold on to it's like a windsurfer, and a kite had a baby.
Hmm.
And so it's like a windsurf wing that is inflatable, but then it has like a hard boom where it has handles that you hold on to, and then you ride that same kind of hydrofoil board on your board, hydrofoil system, and then that's really amazing too. The wind just blows you back and forth. You can go upwind, crosswind, downwind. You can jump. You can put foot straps on your board if you want and do jumps and whatnot. But most people, especially the little bit older demographic, we ride a lot with no foot straps and just enjoy like doing turns, going way upwind and then catching those swells and then just ride.
Let's eddy out and take a quick break. Do you need a break from the cold of a North American winter? Then let's head south to the best whitewater on earth at Pucon Kayak Retreat. Email me at bflowkayak@gmail.com to learn more about how you can take the ultimate paddling adventure in the heart of Chile. Now let's peel out and head downstream.
Riding the hydrofoil down and holding the wing behind you in one hand, and it just kind of flags out behind you. And it's not pulling you anything because you're just like surfing on the swell of the river. So
Isn't it,
that's a lot of
it's so
fun.
amazing as I hear you describe these different sports. It just and this may be like a duh, Captain the obvious thing, but it's like all of our adventure sports, whether it's a ski, a snowboard, a stand-up paddleboard, a mountain bike, a kayak, whatever it is, it's basically somebody with a great mind has looked at some sort of element of nature, wind, water, mountains, snow, whatever it is, and it's like, how can I design something that we can go play in this element of nature? And so,
Right. It's
like,
like,
and how many different combinations can we come up with to magnify our fun on this
right.
element of nature?
And go faster than you could just like, running or swimming or like
Right.
walking down the
Yeah.
trail, it's like, or down the mountain, it's like, that's like, how fast can I hurl my carcass across the earth? It's
Right.
like, so I don't know. It's really, this new foiling thing is magical though, because it really takes a lot of the impact out of the sport.
Uh
So it
huh.
allows you to do it a lot more and pretty aggressive without really incurring a ton of impact on your body and your joints. And it's just like a full body thing, so it's a great workout. You feel good after you've been doing it. So it's a lot of fun. So that's like the latest, greatest thing I've been into. Yeah, it's pretty
Of
cool.
the sports you've done, talk about the difference in the learning curves. Maybe compared to kayaking, a lot of our listeners are probably kayakers, but like, which ones had the fastest learning curve? Which ones had the biggest learning curve? The most crashes maybe at the beginning. Talk about compare and contrast those.
Well, kayaking's learning curve sucks because the
Because you're
first thing
upside
you
down
gotta
swimming.
learn is the last thing you want to do. It's
Right.
like you can't be a whitewater kayaker, really, in my opinion, until you've mastered the role. Until you've
Right.
mastered the role in really in a combat situation where you get tipped over unexpectedly in some kind of current or a rapid and you can roll up. You still got a little ways to go before you're a true whitewater kayaker. Um, Foiling is very similar. Kiteboarding and those types of sports are very similar as well because the first thing you have to learn really how to do is get up on the board. And
Right.
and a lot of times just getting up on the board um, is kind of like learning how to roll. So like hydrofoiling, it's not really the getting on the board's the hard part about the sport. It's the getting the board off the water to where you can just ride on that hydrofoil and
Sure.
balance. So, the average good athlete that I've known, it's going to take them probably 30 to 40 hours of, being out there doing it, trial and error, and just, putting yourself through the paces and getting little beat up and humbled all along the way. And some people don't make it through that process, to be quite honest.
Right.
Like there are some people that I've seen, try to pick up some of these sports and be like, it wasn't for me. Um, Whereas like mountain biking or something is,
Sure.
I think fairly easy because, if you riding a bike is pretty easy. Most people have already learned how to do it when they're young. So then it's just like applying that skill that you already have and then just like, going on a easy wide trail and then just working your way into it. Um, unless you're like a windsurfer, you're not really going to take to hydrofoiling and using some type of wind-driven power. You're not going to learn how to SUP foil. You don't really even have a chance of learning how to SUP foil well until you've spent quite a bit of time stand-up paddle foiling. I mean, just
Hmm.
stand-up paddling.
Sure.
Just being able to paddle around um, pretty well on just a paddle board is a prerequisite.
And
So
a lot of
I
those
don't
wind
know
sports,
why I
you're
pick
pretty
all
limited
these
geography.
sports. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
exactly. Oh,
Yeah.
I said I don't know why I pick all these sports that are super hard to get into, but um, the learning curve is, I think it's pretty, um, it's hard. It's just hard. It takes a lot of time. It takes money,
Yeah.
you got to be in good locations.
Yeah.
Um, and without all of those, it's going to be a lot harder to learn.
Sure.
So I'm very grateful to be able to have the equipment and be in the locations and stuff like that to do it. But a lot of that is my by design, like when I went to Hood River for the first time, I was like, wow, this place is really awesome because it does have something to do every day. Like if it's snowing, you can go snowboarding. If it's drizzly and a little damp, you can go mountain biking. If it's raining hard, like kayaking for days. If
Yeah.
the wind blows, which it does all the time, you can do all these other wind sports.
Yeah.
So,
That's cool.
so yeah, I mean, I love that crossover aspect, and I think that influenced my kayaking career, immensely. Like I was saying, because of I ran a snowboard shop. Yeah, I mean, I started the first snowboard shop in Montana in 1988 with my partner Zach called Board of Missoula, and
Yep.
we were the first Burton dealer in Montana, and we sold rollerblades when they hit when they started like hitting the mainstream. I mean, we sold thousands of pairs of inline skates and
Hmm.
frisbee golf discs. We were just trying to be on kind of on the hot tip for any of those new kind of fun sports. So Board of
Sure.
Missoula is still around. So yeah, it's really cool. They're still there, still slinging skateboards, and they've got a little mini ramp in their shop and stuff. So
Oh,
that
cool.
was a cool chapter of my life too when I was, going to school at the University of Montana and learned about the whole recreation management program and having a great advisor there named Joel Meyer, who actually wrote some of the books on recreation management and going through one of his core recreation semester-long classes. I got to learn a lot from him about the exact industry that I'm interested in and like, how to maybe create a lifelong career out of something that includes, recreation and leisure, and I've been
Right.
able to do that, so ironically, I didn't finish, but I went on to follow my kayaking dreams, which meant traveling pretty hard and wanting to go to all these world championships. So yeah, as soon as I made the USA team, I went to the '93 Worlds on the Ocoee, and
Hmm.
just I just fell in love with freestyle kayaking. And to me, that was the best kind of kayaking because it was about exploring and doing the most with what you have, and
Right.
it was a lot of fun. And back then it was a lot more simple, I think, too, because we just had one kayak, I just had my one,
Right.
you know, Freon Hurricane, and like that was my creek boat, that was my river running boat, and that was my play boat and my like competition boat. Like that was it. So
Yeah.
traveling, it was a little bit easier because you just had one kayak. Um, so that was really neat to be a part of that whole program back then too, with Prion and being able to enjoy the kind of the climax of the half slice back then. Because I mean, the Hurricane really was a iconic boat that did kind of mix that half slice thought process into something that you could, run rivers with, but you could still stand it up on end and, getting that stern underwater and having more of a flat bottom
Hmm.
really made that kayak a lot of fun and a lot of different situations. Yeah, it was really
Yeah.
cool.
I want to go back to you were talking about like the learning curve, and you mentioned the importance of learning to roll. I mean, obviously that's one of the major prerequisites. But now, flow advice from Dan Gavere for a new kayaker. What would you? Somebody said, "Hey, Dan, I want to start learning how to kayak." I mean, obviously, learning how to roll would be one of the best advice you can give anyone. But other than that, maybe like a philosophical mentality or a skill. What advice would you give a new kayaker?
Hmm, that's a good one. I would say to learn how to roll with and without nose plugs.
Good one. Yeah. I like it.
See a lot of people learn how to roll just with nose plugs, and then like they get into a real river situation, and if those nose plugs come off, their chances of swimming go way up. And to
Yeah.
me, that was just always something that blew my mind. I mean, I can't tell you how many sinus infections I've had to to go along with that thought process. But unless I'm like paddling the Potomac in the middle of the summer, I'm probably not wearing nose plugs. Um, uh, but on the other side of the coin, you should always wear earplugs because, like, I know quite a few kayakers that have had that operation on their ears, and it is awful. I've never heard a
Yeah.
good story about it, so yeah, you don't want that. But as far as really the whole act of it, I mean, I really think if you've got some money to get a kayak and a paddle, that it's probably not a bad idea to invest in a course and to like
Yeah.
learn from a professional so that foundationally the first things you learn are like the right things
Sure.
because when you develop bad habits, they take longer to undevelop and break than they do just to learn the right habit right off the get-go. So
Right.
I think, budgeting a little bit of money to get a really good lesson or take a course is great. If you're really lucky, you'll have a friend that will teach you for free in the pool or the lake, teach you how to do it the right way. Um, but yeah, I mean, it is such an amazing sport. Just like I love the people in the sport of kayaking, and that's what really attracted me to it too, because it was like they're very welcoming, and it was like you're camping with them, and it's kayaking is one of those sports that's got that inherent danger. So you have to rely on each other for safety and rescue when you're paddling anywhere at any time. And so even if you paddle a river just one time with somebody, it's like you have a different kind of special friendship that you don't have with just someone you meet on the street.
Right.
Um, so I always really enjoyed that aspect of meeting so many cool people and becoming instantaneous best friends. So
Right.
that was kind of the cool feeling about meeting people from all over the world and kayaking.
Yeah. I mean, I think I can count on less than a handful of times that you and I that I had the privilege to paddle with you, and just by those couple of times, like kind of the same thing, like lifelong friends. Of course, now with social media, you're able to stay in touch with people.
Yeah.
But some of my guests always like to tell a funny anecdotal personal story, and I told this story when I had Clay on. This was like
Hmm.
golly season of either probably like 2001 or 2002. And it was, during the week, a lot of times everybody leaves for the weekend, and it's just kind of the pro kayakers left behind who can afford to dirt bag it all week. And me, you, and Clay, it was just the three of us bombing down the Golly River. And again, like me as a young kid, like watching you guys, I was like, I've made it. Like I'm out here on the Golly River with Clay Wright and Dan Gavere, and it's just the three of us. But the funny part is in the shuttle back up. And again, Golly seasons the fall. That summer, I'd been out west on the pro tour for the first time, and this was like when you had to qualify for the pro tour, and I finally did. And I had finished higher than you and Clay at that competition, and it's not like I like bragged about it or put it on social media because there wasn't social media at the time. But you and Clay were talking, you're like, yeah, like these young paddlers, like they'll brag if they beat you at a rodeo. And it's like, dude, I've been doing rodeos since before you could even roll. And I was like, is he talking about me? Like, that's exactly it. And I kind of like let it go for a minute. And I go, hey, you guys, it is a really big deal if somebody beats you because you're that freaking good. And you're like,
Yeah.
okay, good point. But yeah,
Yeah.
just like, but just you paddle together and it's just like instant, especially when you paddle on something, not that the golly is like super extreme, but anything that's challenging,
Yeah.
makes those connections even grow further.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to hopefully getting on the Golly again this fall. Yeah, I went there about 3 years ago and just had the absolute riot. Yeah, so I'd love to go
It's
back
a
to
lot of
Golly
fun.
Fest again. Yeah.
If you do, for sure, let me know. I'm only about 4.5 hours away, so
Okay,
I can,
absolutely.
I,
Yeah.
I can meet you over there for sure. Speaking of old people getting back into the sport, the next advice I ask is for older people who used to kayak, maybe at a proficient level, high level, and they stopped paddling, and now they're getting back into it. Maybe they still have a skill set, but their body maybe doesn't function as well as it used to. What advice would you give for the aged former veteran paddler getting back into it?
Uh, yeah, I don't know. I think with the new boats, they're pretty awesome, like
Yeah.
yeah, probably like getting one of the newer boats like is probably going to serve you well than like digging all the cobwebs out of something really really old. But
Embrace the bow
uh
rocker.
yeah, the new designs, they've come quite a ways. Like, yeah, it's really neat. I've paddled some of the latest and greatest designs, from Jackson and Piranha and even some of Corn's boats, like I was saying, like the Soul boats and yeah, just the outfitting number one is like so much more comfortable,
Yes, for
and if
sure.
you go, we used to endure so much pain to have fun
Hmm.
kayaking. And now that's not a thing, like you can actually
Right.
paddle with shoes on, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Not get bone
so
spurs on the top of your toes.
yeah, exactly. You're not just like wedging your feet down into a triple X, but yeah, I mean, being comfortable while you're doing it is, important. So, and I think that keeps you, paddling with better technique, probably and better posture. Um,
Yeah.
for me, it's all about having the tightest back band as possible.
Yeah.
Like that
I'm the
is
same
my
way.
key to success. Yeah, like if my back band gets loose or anything, or if I'm upside down and my back band breaks, my
Yeah.
chances of swimming go way up. So, I don't like coming out of my kayak, so I'll do about anything to try to roll back up before I'll swim. But yeah, for me, I cannot paddle well if I don't have like a good fitting kayak where I paddle with a lot of tension between my feet and my back band.
Hmm.
If I have enough, like if I'm locked in enough with my feet, my thighs, and my back band, I really don't need hip pads,
Right.
and so like I even paddled one of Corin's boats on the Golly, and it had a power seat with no hip pads. And yeah, that was pretty amazing because it like jacked up, that power seat lifts up your thighs really high so
Yeah.
that you don't have to like push against your feet to wedge your knees into the thigh hooks. The
Right.
seat just holds them up in there, which I really enjoyed that too because I took some pressure off my feet, and then I didn't need as much of a back bend.
Right.
So I'll have to experiment with that a little bit when I get my new kayak, but yeah, just having a good fitting kayak, having a killer, bench shaft paddle. I still love my old ATs,
You still got your
Uh,
ATs, huh?
oh yeah, I have the very first paddle I ever got. Actually, I dug out of my garage in Salt Lake City, and yeah, the blades they're like this big. Literally, they're like 3 feet tall and like 18 inches wide. These big Kevlar blades they got to be twice as big as the normal size kayak blades,
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, that was the paddle I learned with when I was a little kid. Yeah, just paddling
Wow.
around. Yeah.
So the next question is our Pecan Kayak Retreat Pro Flow hot tip. If somebody was out there and they're maybe, let's say, like a young paddler, maybe in their early 20s or teens, and they're really getting after it, and now the sport has changed, the money's not as much, but they want to be a pro kayaker. What would be your Dan Gavere Pro Flow hot tip to this young gung ho paddler who's like, I want to make a career out of this?
Well, Honestly, it hasn't changed. Hasn't changed from when I did it to what we're
Okay.
doing now. And if you want to
Okay.
become a successful pro athlete, I believe in the action sports space at all, whether you're riding a bike or kayaking, you
Yep.
better learn how to shoot a camera. You better
Right.
learn how to like make videos and blow up your channel and like show people what you do because you have like awesome proof right there on your CV, your resume, your phone, your website, your social media, whatever it is, that's how we're able to market ourselves, really. I mean, that is the
Right.
medium. And you can't do that if you don't have any technology skills, photography skills, most importantly, computer skills. So, if you really want to take advantage of, you know, what's going on now with kayaking and everything, yeah, you better know how to like, shoot your GoPro at, 720 frames a second so you can slow stuff down and make it look cool and figure out how to bribe your girlfriend, your wife, your friend, your family member, into like coming down and holding the phone and videoing you so you can go back and look at it and see what you're doing right, maybe what you're doing wrong and improving your technique and all that kind of stuff. So, marketing yourself is, for some people, it comes naturally. For me, I was lucky there. For other people, it doesn't.
Sure.
They're not comfortable asking for sponsorship. They feel like they're asking for a handout or something, and I totally get that.
Sure.
Um, but you need to be willing to, put yourself out there a little bit and be vulnerable. And, whenever you do that, you open yourself up to criticism and haters and
Hmm.
commenters and people with judgments, which is just people. So it's just, it's that's just part of it. If you're going to be a pro athlete, you've got to have fans, and in order to have fans, you got to be able to stand in front of a camera and have people look at you, or stand in
Right.
front of a group. So getting
Yeah.
comfortable with that is, I think, is an important skill to have anyways for this day and age for kids. I mean, there's
Sure.
so many more people that are just inside on their devices because they have all the entertainment they need right in the palm of their hand. We never had that. We were really
Right.
lucky to grow up in a era through the 70s and 80s when I grew up, and was really like a kid going to school. It was all analog. Nothing was digital. The only
Of
thing
course.
really that was digital was the telephone and the TV,
Right.
and even those still, we barely had remote controls. Uh, there were no cell phones really. I mean, I went through half my
I got my
kayaking
first one in
career.
2000.
Yeah, I went through half my kayaking career with no cell phone. We would
Right.
literally be like, we're going to Chile. We're going to be there from January 1st to February 1st. We'll be on the Foodlafoo. Like, you want to come down and find us? Like, come on down.
Yeah.
Like, we'll see you. If we're
I've
not
thought
there,
about
we're
that with so many
probably
things,
looking.
but
Yeah, it
how
was just
hard
like,
was it to like rally your crew?
yeah,
But
yeah,
we always did. It's just like meet us
yeah.
at the green put in at
Yeah,
we'll
we
be there
made
at
it
two
happen.
o'clock. Yeah, I
We
just
had
made it happen.
notepads and we had our little like everyone had a little address book,
Yeah.
with all their friends' numbers, and you had your atlas, and those were your three little kind of Bibles that you were like that led our lives around the world, and like even when we went to Chile, we knew no Spanish, but the first thing we learned was like how to say bridge, because like pretty much the only access to the river was at the bridge. And as
Right.
long as we could find the bridge, we could always find the put in and the takeout. So it was like
Yeah.
really, we didn't need to know that much Spanish to go kayaking in Chile. So yeah, we stumbled around there a few times, getting into some pretty amazing adventures, but being some of the first to paddle like the Rio Claro and being able to get on the Bio Bio and some of those other rivers that are either cult classics or now are gone.
Right.
We were very fortunate. So, and even, the Palgine, holds a special place in my heart because we filmed so much on that river for Paddle Quest. And that was also incidentally the river that Brennan Guth lost his life on
Right.
after we had spent, him and I had spent, dozens and dozens of hours, filming and paddling and like forming a friendship on that river. So, um, yeah, it's kind of interesting that way, and that is also a tough part of our sport that other sports don't have. It's just the
Right.
fatalities are a part of the sport, and that's never changed, and yeah, it's a tough part of it, for sure. It's not the reason why I got out of the sport, but as soon as the sport started to kind of morph from our, like, I'm gonna call it the playboat era, and it
Hmm.
morphed into what I call the Red Bull era,
Yeah.
is really where we saw a demarcation of kind of like the it went from park and play to park and pray, and it was just really it really lost its mainstream appeal at the
Yep.
exact same time as we had a little recession, we had 9/11, and then we
Yep.
had like all these other sports blowing up. And so that was where we saw that kind of big dip in whitewater paddling. And I think that was also kind of when we saw, we started to see the writing on the wall, like, whoa, this freestyle kayak thing might not go forever, like
Right.
it's actually on a kind of on a dip, So
It,
for me,
that's
it was
so
just
interesting.
natural
You.
because I was into kiteboarding at that point. So it was like I just kind of sidestepped. I never really stopped kayaking completely,
Hmm.
obviously, and thank goodness kayaking is like riding a bike for me. I can usually get on and pick it right back up. But yeah, that fatality part of the sport was always something that, it's just every single person that I did it with at a professional level had suffered, losing a friend,
Yeah.
it sucked. Yeah,
Yeah.
and sometimes lots of them. So,
That's so interesting. You mentioned the decline of the sport, and you mentioned an event, 9/11. I wrote an article for Kayak Session Magazine this past 9/11 anniversary
hmm.
because it was really impactful for me. I was on the galley the
Hmm.
Thursday after 9/11 happened, and one of
Hmm.
the things I mentioned in the sport was like, or in the article was how we saw like the world change in that moment in so many
Hmm.
ways geopolitically, but the kayak world was also changing. And I mentioned like how on the river that day, like none of us wanted to get off. And when we got off the river, we were getting off to a changed world. And certainly kayaking is a minuscule part of what was going on, but like kayaking was changing in that very time as well. And we didn't know it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'll never forget. I mean, I had been up training and then competing at I think it was the World Championships that year on the Ottawa. And so I had like a big trailer, like a 40-foot tow behind trailer. And I had been kayaking for like a month and a half straight, just training and kayaking and training kayaking on the Ottawa. And so I was like, I just want to go kiteboarding for like 2 or 3 days. So I went to Kingston, where apparently there were some kiteboarders, and the wind was blowing, and I had like the time of my life. And then I was supposed to drive back into the States that day, and was driving for the border, was sitting in line at the border when they closed it.
Oh, wow.
And someone jumped out of their car and ran back to each of the cars and was telling them something. And I'm like, oh, I wonder what's going on. And they're like,
Wow.
you should turn your radio on. And as soon as I turned the radio on, they were like, oh yeah, the first tower just fell. And so then I had to turn around. I had to stay in Canada for like another week. Like I was so ready to like drive back to the US and like head home and like kind of decompress and like not kayak for a minute. So I was like really into kiteboarding at that point, and I had just been training and just kayaking just nonstop, and
Right.
then we got stuck in Canada for like another week. So instead of going back to the Ottawa, I just went back to Kingston and went kiteboarding.
Yeah, but it was just
That was
amazing how
Oklahoma.
so many things changed in that moment, and like I said, our sport did too. Um,
Oh, it did a lot, and it kind of parallels the pandemic a little bit if you kind of look at
yeah,
it. It
uh
changed the
huh,
world back then, and it's like
yeah,
something you never could dream of happening, and then it happens, and then yeah, and then also with the pandemic, and that's what happened too with with our sport of stand-up paddling. Like after the pandemic, like the SUP sport was like just like 80% smaller. It was like
Mm,
noticeable, you know,
wow.
for whatever reason. Usually it's a culmination of things,
Right.
but yeah, that was definitely some interesting times, and about when, the sport of freestyle kayaking hit its peak, I
Yep.
think. Yeah.
Yep. For sure. Yeah. Interesting. Well, let's shift to a little bit more happy topic now. And I mentioned that you and I've paddled together some. And now you want to run some virtual rapids with me? Do a little rapid fire here.
That'd be great. I'm ready.
All right,
Let's do it.
and then I'm going to save the last rapid. We're going to run it blind, no scouting. I'll
All
explain
right.
the rules of that rapid
Read and
when we get
run.
there. All right, so the first rapid is rivers of all time. So you're going to give me like a Mount Rushmore here. So I throw out a topic, you give me your top 4 or 5 favorite of all time for these topics. And the first one, rivers of all time.
Oh, for sure. The top one for me is the Lochsa. Second one's the
Okay,
Upper Golly. Third one's probably the Rio Palguin in Chile. Uh, the fourth one would probably be the White Salmon.
okay. Kayak designs of all time.
Oh wow, kayak designs of all time. Um, for sure the Dancer,
Nice.
um, Prion, Hurricane, definitely. I would say the Savage Fury. Um, and nowadays, I would say like the Antics.
Yep, very cool. Kayakers of all time.
Uh, Kayakers of all time. Let's see. Walt Blackadar, uh, Rob Lesser, um, Corin Addison, Clay Wright, Shane Benedict, Jeff Schneider,
That's a
uh,
good list.
Dane Jackson.
Kind of hard not to have Dane on there, but yeah. All right, so this is the blind rapid. So here's how the blind rapid works: is the topic is countries to paddle in, and you've got to rank them 1 through 5. So 1 would be your favorite country to paddle in, 5 would be your fifth favorite. But the catch is you don't. Here's where the blind comes in. You don't know what countries I'm going to say.
So five is the your most
Would be
favorite, and one being
five. Five
least.
would 1 would be your most favorite.
Oh, okay,
So like
okay,
five, number 1 is number 1. Number 5 would be your
okay,
fifth.
got it.
So I may say New Zealand, and you're like, oh, number 1, and then I say, well, Chile, or I may say like Saudi Arabia, and you're like, oh crap, where am I gonna put
I take that
whatever.
one back.
Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna give a 5. You got to rank them here, but you don't know what country comes next. All right. So
Okay.
the first one, Canada.
Two,
Okay. The USA.
one,
Okay. Chile.
three,
New Zealand.
five.
All right. So that leaves your space for number 4, Costa Rica.
Perfect.
All right. So you like your list, huh?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, luckily I paddled in all those places, so that's good.
But I knew 4 of those for sure, and I was just taking a chance on Costa Rica that you had paddled in. I'm like, surely Dan's paddled in Costa Rica. All
The
right.
Rio Rossi.
That's right. Yeah. 2 questions left. A river that you've never done that you want to get on.
River that I've never done that I want to get on. Mm, Probably the Zambezi.
Okay. That surprised me. You've never been there, but
Yeah.
awesome. That would be a good one. I have 2 left that are on. I've never done the Grand Canyon or the Zambezi. Those are the 2 left on my
Okay.
list.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, you definitely got to get on the Grand.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So this is the last question. It's called Final Flow. The river gods come down and they said, Dan, you had a nice run, but this is the last time you get to put on a spray skirt. That's the bad news. The good news is you get to be any age, you get to be in any boat, on any river, and you get to pick your crew.
Oh, geez. Oh, well, it probably just happened like 3 or 4 years ago when I was at Golly Fest. I had like 2 or 3 days in a row just paddling with, a whole bunch of old friends. And
Yeah.
a couple of days I didn't know who I was going to be paddling with. But we had paddled together a lot, and it was just like great just running into them on the river. And so that's kind of like a dreamy situation. But I would probably say the Upper Golly, yeah, during Golly Fest, with just my crew from back in the day. I mean, Taylor Robertson, maybe Jamie Simon, Clay, Willie Kern, Brennan Guth, Pablo Perez. I mean, those
Yep.
folks that should still be around,
Yes, they should. Yeah.
and doing something like that isn't like, where you're risking your life and paddling class five all day, but it's just you can make it as hard as you want, or it's just, pretty just easy breezy, I love
Right.
that river for that, and it's a full day and it's not roadside. You can't
Right.
just like, you're not just looking at cars whizzing by,
Right.
so I just love that river for that. Yeah.
Awesome. That's a great answer. And Dan, thanks so much for being on B-Flow Sessions. Thanks for still giving back to the sport, hosting, being on the MC mic for the GoPro Mountain Games, and doing all
Yeah.
the things that you do out there, and for all the
Thanks.
sports that you're involved in.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. I'm just lucky to be able to do it and follow, the path of my paddle still, and just, out there getting my butt wet as much as I can because it's a lot of fun. And when you get a little older, falling in the water doesn't hurt nearly as bad as falling on the ground. So I
That's
also
right.
like that aspect too.
Very cool. Well, Dan, thanks again for being on B-Flow Sessions.
Thanks a lot. You have a good evening. Catch you later.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of B-Flow Sessions, where we explore how paddlers find their flow on the water and in life. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the show, leave a rating, or share it with a friend. It truly helps us grow the community. And a huge thank you to Pucon Kayak Retreat for sponsoring today's episode. If you're ready for a world-class Chilean whitewater adventure, email me at bflowkayak@gmail.com and I'll help you get dialed in. Until next time, keep finding your flow.